But I apologize. I hope you could indulge me for a minute. I want to talk about a dream I had last night. It was actually a nightmare. And it was so real. You know how sometimes you wake up and you're like, did that really happen? So I woke up and so vividly I had this nightmare that Woody Johnson, the owner of the New York Jets, got so involved with the football team I love.
Isn't he already?
That Woody Johnson was actually demanding that they bench Aaron Rodgers 3 weeks into the season. And I'm like, oh, my God. I tried to wake myself up out of the nightmare, but I kept sleeping. And then the dream continued. And then I had a nightmare that Woody Johnson basically told his general manager a year ago, you're a lump of coal, you're useless, you're not going to do anything. So when you come to me and you say, hey, I want to extend Bryce Huff, a good young player that we've developed, I'm going to say, nah. And then I had the nightmare continue. And again, I'm twisting, I'm turning, I'm trying to wake up. I'm screaming my wife's name. Please get me out of this nightmare. Then I got this one that the Jets had a deal done for Jerry Jeudy. And Woody Johnson again said, nope, not doing it. Then another nightmare where Woody Johnson was like, Hassan Reddick? I'm not negotiating with this clown. And then I finally woke up. And I took a deep breath and I said, Evan, I know you root for horrible sports teams, horrible sports franchises that have given you nothing in your entire life. But no, don't worry. Your franchises can't be that pathetic. Your football team couldn't possibly be run by an owner who knows less football than what's in my thumb right now. It's not possible that the owner of the team started lecturing football lifers. Say what you want about them. They're football lifers like Robert Saleh, like your friend Nate Hackett, like Joe Douglas. There's no way Woody Johnson, who's an expert on nothing other than, being a billionaire, actually lectured them to sit a Hall of Fame quarterback 3 weeks into a season. There's no way that happened. So I woke up and I felt better because I said, Tiki, none of that could possibly be true.
Well, I mean, you could question it if it was some, I don't know, internet troll. But this is Zach Rosenblatt and Diana Rossini on The Athletic. And we know that their stuff is good. And it probably came from the now ex-general manager of the New York Jets. So when you get fired, guess what? There is no gag order in football. And so
there's no NDAs in football.
No NDAs.
Yeah.
He didn't have, I was going to say keep paying me, but he only has, 8 weeks left on his contract. So that doesn't even matter. But you know where this came from, which just gives you that much more belief that it's true. And the crazy thing, because the first thing I thought when I heard this was, man, does that mean that Robert Saleh got fired because he wouldn't bench Aaron Rodgers? Now, I don't think ultimately, as I thought about it, I don't think that was actually the case, but it was probably the beginning of the case. And, Woody Johnson, does he think that Tyrod Taylor is better for this team in that moment? Maybe. But why isn't someone there to tell him that's not the case? Right? Why does he even have that thought that he can go to his, apparently, GM, head coach, offensive coordinator, basically all the decision makers on the offensive side of the ball and make that claim? Now, maybe it was just hey, we should have a conversation about Aaron. He doesn't look healthy, yada, yada, yada. Maybe it's being blown out of proportion in that way.
Right.
But just the fact that you're having like a sit-down meeting about benching the guy that you spent all of these resources to bring in makes no damn sense.
Yes, and what really kills you about that request from Woody Johnson, and really any of the requests of Woody Johnson, is not even the specific request or the specific thing he wanted. Here's the ultimate problem, and we can go through every owner in this city, every owner in this town, and a lot of these owners have evolved. Some of these owners were hands-on, and they're not hands-on anymore. Others aren't hands-on. Now they're a little bit more hands-on. Here are the facts. If you're hands-on like this, like what was described of Woody Johnson, I can promise you will win nothing. You are in a cycle of hell.
Right.
It is one thing for you and I to have fair and honest discussions about draft picks and free agent signings.
Right. Or even opinionated discussion.
Of course, on what general managers do. And if they don't do a good enough job, eventually they get fired. Look, I've been here for a long time. I've watched a lot of general managers in New York sports come and go. And some of them have done better jobs than others. And we have nice discussions on what they've done. And really, it's a win-loss business. If you win enough, you'll stick around. If you lose too much, you're gone. An owner is a lot scarier, bro. It's scarier because they don't get fired. Ultimately, Woody Johnson can do whatever he wants with his toy known as the New York Jets. And to me, the ultimate sign that you're going to win nothing is when you have an owner that's as handsy as that.
Right.
You're not going to win when you have an owner that's that handsy. So it's not even about the decision to walk into respected football men's offices and tell them to bench Aaron Rodgers. It's not even that. It's not even nixing the Jerry Jeudy trade. It's not even the Bryce Huff extension. It's nothing specific. It's the idea that if the owner of the team, who, yes, has every right to do whatever the hell they want, if they continue to act that way, I can promise you this, they will lose forever.
Right.
They will continue to be losers. And that's why this story around Woody Johnson is not about one move. It's not about one decision. It's that if this continues, our sentence has been written. We will watch nothing but garbage for the rest of our lives until Woody Johnson either sells, leaves, or croaks. And I'm not rooting for any of that stuff. I'm just being honest. We're just having an honest conversation. That's the reality. You can't be this handsy as an owner, know this little about football, and expect to win anything. Tell me when I'm saying something wrong.
You're not. I mean, who thought on a Wednesday after the season is basically, going down the drain, you're going to get this emotional about Woody Johnson? You know what it feels like to me? Because we've seen this somewhere else before. Now, it happens that the other guy who does this in the NFL actually played football in college. He actually had success being the quote-unquote general manager of his team early in his tenure as an owner. I'm talking obviously about Jerry Jones.
Sure.
But look at what Jerry Jones has failed to do for the last 2 decades. It's been forever since the Dallas Cowboys had a legitimate shot to win a championship, even though there has been meddling every single step of the way. It doesn't work. Because what you ultimately end up doing is undercutting those that you put in position to have that power. Whether it's Douglas with coaches and scouts and everybody else, or it's Robert Saleh with his assistant coaches and his players. Like, once you start taking control away from those guys that you gave control, like reverse delegation, it emasculates them.
Yes.
It makes them ineffective, and people will not listen to you anymore when they don't feel like you're a strong leader because someone else is taking that away from you.
You know what else? It's a great point you bring up, but here's what else happens. Every single person in the NFL reads this story, hears the stories, and hears the whispers. Why would you ever work for him? Why would you ever work for him? Why would good people, good football people, other than desperation, come and work for Woody Johnson and the New York Jets? So even if Woody has a come-to-Jesus moment today, he listens to sports talk radio, he looks at social media, and Woody says, you know what? I'm doing more harm than good. I'm going to go away. I'm going to go to the United Kingdom. I'm going to try to hire some good people, and I'm not going to get involved. I'm never going to call. I'm never going to text. I'm just going to say, go win, and I'll give you 4 years. And I'll come back in 4 years, and if you're winning, great. I'll give you an extension. If you're not winning, I'm going to fire everybody. Even if he has that moment, who would believe him? Who around the NFL would buy it when you hear that Joe Douglas was treated like a potted plant for the last 13 months? Who would believe it when you hear about the owner going to the head coach and saying, sit the Hall of Fame quarterback after 3 weeks? Who would believe it? So it's so bad. I can't overstate how bad this is. I can't overstate how pathetic this franchise is. Sometimes you people, you Giant fans out there, you probably look at us like we're the boy who cried wolf. Like, this is what Jet fans do. You scream and you yell and you want everyone to feel bad for you, and it's same old Jets and all that kind of stuff.
Good analogy.
You like that? I promise you, this stuff's real now. This is bad. This isn't, we're just freaking out on a Wednesday in November. This is horrible stuff. This is Dolan in his prime of badness stuff. And by the way, he fixed it. I don't mean to run Dolan down. Why should I? He fixed it. He realized he shouldn't be involved. And despite releasing statements, he may not be half wrong, that the NBA's harassing him and the Knicks, which we'll get to later, he doesn't get involved anymore because he realized it. And sometimes it takes years to get that stank off of you because everyone thinks you're still getting involved. I am telling you right now, ring the alarm bells from the loudest tower, from the loudest building. We as Jet fans are screwed. And that's concerning because I don't want to be a football fan that says we're done forever. But when you have an owner who acts this way, how could you talk me out of the negativity that we all face?
Well, you talk yourself out of the negativity because he cares. That's the one thing you do know. He cares.
I'll give him that little check mark.
Right.
He cares.
He does care. But otherwise, he wouldn't be doing these things.
Right.
He wouldn't be trying to take control. But there's a difference, I think, between caring and knowing what you're good at. And maybe because you're the owner, you think you're good at everything else. And you're stepping in and creating disruption because you're trying to make it better. And you don't realize it. And so who's going to tell him that? Like, who's in position to tell him that? It's why I keep talking about there needs to be that little buffer.
Right.
Like that well-respected whoever it may be. Maybe it's who was it in Denver? John Elway. Mm-hmm. Or John Elway took over and I forget what his title was. He ultimately became the president and the GM, but maybe you need that.
Well, you know what I think it is? You're right. It's someone he respects. It also may have to be, and I think this is like a chicken and the egg thing because I'm going to describe what they need, but then going back to the point I made before, it's impossible to get that because no one's going to want to work here, but you need someone with a resume.
Yes.
Because Joe Douglas was here for 5.5 years, and he didn't win anything. In fact, it was the opposite. To be in one job for 5.5 years and never have a winning season is almost an accomplishment. Like, it is incredible to keep one's job. It's why whenever I hear people say you need to be more patient, you're talking about another franchise. You're not talking about the Jets.
Right.
I don't want to hear about patience. Joe Douglas was here for the full 6 years, basically, of his contract.
Right. And
they didn't win.
And they have yet to be to the postseason, and this is now going on 13 years.
And not only that, like his record, which we talked about yesterday, is 30-63. I'd actually argue it's worse because when he took over, he actually took over where he had no offseason, where he just inherited a roster, and that was the best year he had. They went 7-9. Why are we even giving him credit for that? So it's actually worse. So I think the problem is you invest in someone, you give them the power. 4 years later, you're like, hey, you still suck. What am I doing? And then you feel the urge to get involved. So the only person or persons that Woody would listen to is someone who's got the resume that he can point to and say, this is why you should trust me, and you point to a win-loss record. Joe Douglas didn't have that. And that's why Woody got involved. But the problem is it's too late. It's been broken. Even if you want to hire that person and get out of the way, who would trust you? Right. Who would trust Woody Johnson at this point?
I think it's got to be unconventional. Honestly, it's Phil Savage who's been filling that role, who is now the interim general manager. Like, I don't think anybody realized Phil Savage was on within this organization until he got appointed to the. Maybe if you know football, you do, but I had no idea, and I know who Phil Savage is, and so it probably was him. And maybe he's the one that's been guiding Woody. But if he's now the interim, doesn't it feel like there was an ulterior motive? And so it gets really dicey when you appoint the guy who was advising you as the replacement for the guy you just fired. It just gets dicey.
I can't believe I'm going to say this because I have scoffed and laughed at everybody that's brought this up, but desperate times call for desperate measures. For Woody to trust anybody, it's got to be somebody he's had success with. I can't believe I'm saying this. We've been thinking about Rex, the head coach. How about Rex, the team president?
Same old Jets.
Dude, I know that sounds crazy.
Rex would want to do that. I think Rex wants. I think he misses the grind of being a head coach, and being an executive is a completely different grind. And so I don't know if he'd want to do that. He's only 61 years old. He'll be 62 in a month or so.
Could he be a head coach and bring in his instead of doing the roles reverse? I know it sounds backwards, but we're talking about a deranged situation with Woody Johnson where he needs somebody he could trust. I'm even laughing at myself, but Rex is somebody with Woody that has that relationship.
I don't like going backwards. You know, and
that's
the
what it would
analogy,
feel like.
It all feels like going backwards. And I used this analogy when Joe brought it up weeks ago. Do you marry your ex-wife? No. Nobody marry. I mean, if you do marry your ex-wife, let me know how that goes. I can't imagine
Well,
there's
what
a lot
if she's been doing Pilates since you broke up?
It doesn't matter. So I'm not a fan of going backwards. And yeah, over the next few weeks and months, we're going to have names. We brought up names yesterday of who can save this franchise. The problem is, as long as Woody Johnson is going to act the way he was described yesterday in The Athletic, courtesy of some very good reporting by Diana Rossini, Zach Rosenblatt, and Joe Douglas himself, then nothing can save the New York Jets. That's the depressing part. Woody Johnson needs to change. And even if he decides to change today, who the hell would believe him?